Hi, Kara. It's nice to see you again.
Dick, I'm so glad you're here. It's great to see you too.
At our last visit, in our introductory visit, we talked about problems of practice as being a focus point of some of our conversations.
Yeah.
Is there something that you want to talk about today?
You know, actually, there is. I've been really struggling with this notion that we are an underachieving school district, and I'm really struggling with the notion that it seems that everyone in the community feels, meaning the board and staff, feel pretty comfortable putting the shoulder of blame on parents for why our students are underperforming. And I'm having a real hard time with that. I don't believe that that's really the crux of why our students are not achieving at their standard.
What are some of your personal feelings about it?
Well, it's a good question because I have a sense of personal outrage. I think that I think there's a real lack of understanding about our parent community from a lot of the teachers and principals, and I think just this willingness to kind of say, well, these parents don't support their kids and they don't care. I think that comes from that lack of understanding, and they don't understand the different economic stretches that some of our parents are dealing with. They don't understand the time constraints. They don't understand some of the different cultural norms that these parents are coming to this country with. And so it might appear that these parents don't care about their kids because they're not doing what we would typically expect or hope parents to do. But no, I don't see anybody really getting out there and asking. I don't really see anybody getting out there and trying to make sense of what's happening within the community. I just see this real sense of blame, and it makes me think that we are missing a huge opportunity here to really address what's going on, which is we've got some teachers that need to be beefed up in their professional practice. And
So how is this affecting your plans and your vision?
well, I did not take this job to just keep things status quo. You know, I'm here to really boost student achievement. I'm really here to address the achievement gap, which just even naming it, I think, has been challenging. And so when you ask me how does it impact my goals, I think the primary thing is that it's preventing me from even being able to really name that closing the achievement gap is one of my goals, because there's this sort of lackadaisical perception about, well, the achievement gap, yeah, but these kids, their parents, and so it's sort of like it's expected. It's not really something that we want to solve. It's just kind of the way it is.
Are there others who share your concern, your vision?
Well, I think there's a couple people on my cabinet that, they've definitely given me some looks when the board members tend to shy away from the conversation and don't really want to acknowledge it to the level at which it needs to be acknowledged. So, yeah, I think that I think there's a couple members on my cabinet that probably feel the same way I do.
Have you talked with them about what they think you should do or you all should do?
We've had some conversations at the preliminary level in terms of looking at our data and really being able to sort of point out trends in specific populations. And so we haven't really got to the what do we do about the problem. We're really sort of hovering over what's the problem, how can we name the problem, how can we present this problem to the board and to the schools so that they have a sense of urgency. So we haven't really gotten to the, I think if I were to think about what the problem is right now, the problem is sort of getting people on board to acknowledge that there's a problem.
There's a problem.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I
Yeah.
understand. Have you thought about any possible approaches?
In terms of sort of messaging this
gap,
the
yes,
achievement gap?
messaging this issue around equity and the achievement gap.
Well, we're very data-driven in education right now. That is definitely, I noticed that people tend to pay attention when you start using big numbers. And so I wonder if, I'm wondering if one of the most impactful ways to present this information would be through some sort of data presentation, looking at our district data team as a vehicle to possibly maybe even just look at the data, suspend my own agenda for a minute, and have people make some noticings about what they're seeing, and then be able to kind of come in, or even have somebody else sort of say, so what is this data telling us? What are some conclusions we could draw, or what are some patterns we could name? Maybe that might be a way. And then it's not coming from me, you know.
Who might you involve?
Well, so if the district data team is doing a presentation, I would definitely want a couple of those members, if not all of my members of my cabinet, even people who might be dissenters, because it might be an opportunity for me to get more people in my cabinet even on board. So I would want to involve my cabinet. I would want to involve members of the board, obviously. And I mean, I'm not sure. We're a small enough district that I could probably do this with principals, you know, at a principal meeting. But I have to think about that. I have to think about, does it make sense to try to do a trial run first with principals and then do it with board members? I'm not sure.
Is this issue of data collection and data analysis related back to your own and the district's vision in any way?
So you're asking me if using data to drive decision making is related to the
overall plan.
The overall plan. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We don't want to just be making decisions based on our hunches or, you know, our own personal agendas. I think data is a really important part of the decision making and the vision.
You mentioned an outside consultant, possibly as helping to steer this effort of yours. Have you given that much thought?
Did I mention an outside consultant? I wonder
an
if
outside source.
Oh, so I mean, yeah, I think I meant someone like not me.
Not you.
Yeah, maybe somebody else from my cabinet or someone else within the district, like our, you know, like our data, the head of our data team for the district. She might be a really good person to do that.
Were there any other stakeholders that you might think about including within this group?
I mean, I guess if I really think about wanting to change the perception that people have around parent, so first it's around kind of acknowledging this achievement gap piece and sort of helping people see that there's a gap.
Right.
But if I'm recognizing too that part of my frustration is that folks are so eager to just kind of say, well, this is the fault of those parents, I wonder if it might be strategic to start bringing in some key parents, and so parents who are like the presidents of PTA, or we do have some parent representation on the district data and accountability committee, and so maybe making sure that they're there and really maybe they have a key component, a key role to play, because that might actually create an opportunity for people to start seeing, wow, look, the parents are here, they've got some things to say, and that might start to shift that perception even before we start the real work, you know, of addressing how people are blaming parents. I hadn't thought about that.
And the potential outcome of this session, which includes, as you described, a broader stakeholder group?
Yeah. So I think probably the largest outcome is going to be really around people wrapping their minds around the fact that we do have an achievement gap, that it's there, it's bold, it rests solidly with our children of color and our children who are receiving free and reduced lunch, and we have to name it. So that for me would be a huge outcome, that people could actually begin to see it and say it and not be afraid to say it. Wow, look, all of our second language learners are dramatically underachieving. All of our kids who receive free and reduced lunch are dramatically underachieving.
It's interesting you haven't mentioned a board member as a potential part of this study group or this analytical group.
You mean in terms of
their participation?
Participation.
Because I heard you say earlier that they were,
resisting.
like the community, resistant, passing, ignoring the realities of the data that you know so well.
Yeah.
Their involvement?
Well, so I think at this point, I think where I was in my thinking, it was having my cabinet and sort of the data people really, we've been mulling over this data, we've been sitting with this data, and I think we've been presenting the data to the board, but I don't know that we've been presenting it with this intent to sort of reveal this achievement gap. And so I think moving forward, so when you asked me earlier about an outcome, I think one outcome is to name it. I think the other outcome might be that we come away with a task force that really looks at what we could do with the achievement gap, and I think that would be an appropriate time to include one or two or however many board members it might make sense to be part of this committee that sort of steps away and does a deeper dive with the research and begins to not just look at the research, but also look at possible solutions and things that we might, as a district, be able to do to address the achievement gap. And then also look at sort of this offshoot of the achievement gap, which is the fact that the parents don't care.
The research is so clear, and you've mentioned that, and yet your principals, your cabinet, clearly understands the research. Related to this discussion, what's preventing them to so easily accept the notion that there's very little they can do about it, yet confronted with the research? They're bright people.
So there is a lot of compelling research out there that talks about the importance of family and community engagement. And I think part of the resistance is maybe coming from the mindset that principals have around that notion and that teachers have around that notion, which is that the primary indicator is if families are involved is are the kids getting their homework done, right? Or are they coming to conference night? Are they showing up to the PTA meetings? And so these are very, it's just a very one-way street. It's how much is the parent giving to the school. And so I think that the mindset is part of the resistance for wanting to really address their own perceptions of.
Is also the mindset created by, in their mind, a lack of understanding of what your vision might be?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think I've been stumbling a little bit, not really being sure of, hearing people being okay with this, where we are as a district, easily blaming the parents. And so, maybe I've been really shy about being bold with my vision and saying, part of my vision moving forward is that, this is a team effort and that the parents are a huge and important, vastly important part of our team. So maybe I need to really look at how I'm including parents as a part of my vision for a high-performing school district and what their role really is.
Considering the culture and the climate, that could be risky.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. It could be very risky. I'm not sure what to say about that.
Is there more at stake?
I wonder if I risk more status quo. That's a huge risk too, right? We continue to fail our kids. We continue to allow this sort of almost a humiliation of a huge segment of our population. That feels risky too.
So what would be that first step then?
Well, I think we're sort of I think I have shadows of first steps. And so what you're helping me do is really crystallize and bring those shadows out and make them more concrete. And so I think definitely really solidifying the data that we have and creating putting out an invitation and really creating an opportunity to share this data with the stakeholders, and so including the board members and some key family, parents that are sitting already on the district accountability committee, making sure that principals are in the audience, and really giving an opportunity for folks to sort of muddle through the data and really uncover these trends and these patterns themselves, and almost themselves name the achievement gap. That to me feels like a really big first step. I think the next step would be to really engage the most interested parties. And making sure that we have a representation from each of the stakeholder groups to become a task force and really begin to look at what we can do. So I think that those are two concrete things. I'm still a little fuzzy on just and maybe it's my own sort of nervousness around really embracing this cultural disconnect we have around parent and family engagement, and how do we really start to get people to embrace our families and reach out to them and stop looking at them as the problem and start seeing that they actually are a huge part of the solution. So I need to work on that a little bit and really figure out how I can be a little bit more bold in my vision and messaging that vision that's a little bit more all-encompassing.
Let's talk more about being bold.
Let's talk more about being bold. Okay. I'm not sure how to start that conversation.
You appear to be very clear about your vision. You know what you believe.
Yeah, I do. So I'm
What are the opportunities that exist where you could begin to talk about this more publicly?
okay. I mean, so I have to really think about that. Like, what are some authentic opportunities that already exist that I'm not taking advantage of? So maybe looking at the places where there already are high concentrations of parents who are actively engaged in things. Are there schools that are having higher success rate than others? So maybe looking at out there in our district, in our community, what's working, and use that to highlight as an example of why this is something that we all need to kind of be looking at and embracing and leveraging these successes into part of how we do business, leveraging it into higher student success. Maybe that's a way to start.
So there are examples within the district where there is a recognition that the achievement does exist, gap does exist.
Well,
and there are people who are really sincerely, who believe your mission, yes?
I mean, I think that there are places where schools value the parent population and they just have a better, I mean, I definitely haven't heard the sort of talk around the achievement gap so much guiding the conversations about why we embrace families at these schools where they do have high family and community engagement. So that might be something that they'll come to understand. It might just be implicit. It hasn't been like their headline. But they do have, these couple schools that I'm thinking about do have high participation, and they have lots, the community is just, it feels like there's always something happening at that school that's bringing the community together. That school is sort of like this centerpiece for the community. And so I'm wondering, so yeah, I think that there are definitely places where that's happening that I could highlight. So that feels like a good place to start, actually.
Yeah, good. In the conversations about your vision and the potential task force and creating the data share that you talked about, and the opportunities that exist within the district to build upon your vision, I'm curious to know, how does this tie into your personal goals with the board and the board's goals? How is this? We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a really good question. I mean, something I know about the board is that when communities are happy, boards are happy, right? I think that's fair to say. So I think that there's something to be said for generating really positive buzz within the community about what's happening in the school district. The board's got to take notice of that. And so I wonder if, in me highlighting what's working well with these schools, there's also this opportunity to kind of talk to the board about, this is like a shining example of everything that's going well. Let's look at this school, and let's look at what are all the things that are happening at this school, what are the challenges that this school has, so that we could name the achievement gap piece, and what are some of the things that they're doing to address it? How are they bringing in families? How have they been able to begin to make significant gains in student achievement? There's still not enough, but it's a starting place,
But what do you expect from the board in return?
I think I expect them to start to shift their thinking a little bit in terms of, okay, so here's a school where we have, 90% of our kiddos receive free and reduced lunch, and 75% of those kiddos are identified as minority culture. So maybe the board will begin to see that this is a place with even all these conditions where there's high involvement from the community, and that's making a difference, but that there's also high teacher efficacy. I mean, teachers are reaching out. Teachers are, they don't just have high family and community engagement. They've got remarkable teachers. They have a professional development plan that is really outstanding. And so there are a lot of things that are going right at that school particularly. The other school has less family and community engagement, but definitely the high teacher efficacy. And so I'm wondering if using these two schools is just this opportunity for the board to kind of see all sides of the coin, and that we can't disenfranchise our parents. We can't blame them. We can't ignore the fact that our teachers really do need ongoing current professional development opportunities to up their practice as things continue to change. Like, that's a huge part of what makes a school successful as well, not just the parents, but also having really highly qualified teachers.
So we had to summarize what you originally brought as the problem of practice. What have you learned today?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that's sort of in the front of my mind is just around, I think I need to be really clear on what the issues are. And I think I need to be really clear about how I include, from a sort of solution-minded, sort of an asset-based mindset, these concerns in my vision. Like, my vision for this district needs to be a lot clearer, and it needs to be communicated to the stakeholders.
So the next clear steps would be in regard to that
Yeah, I mean,
approach?
I think I need to, well, I kind of, this might sound silly, but I think I need to really just kind of sit down and write it out and sort of see, am I capturing all the buckets? Am I clear on what it is I want to see happen? Because if I'm not clear, then clearly nothing will happen. So
Understood.
I need to get clear. And I also need to do an ally check. I mean, you asked me that question earlier on about, who on my team is sort of on my side and gets it. And I think that's a really good thing. So I think be clear of what the issues are, know who my allies are, and know where our successes are in the district. That was sort of something that I hadn't really thought about sort of highlighting, to kind of say, let's put the spotlight on these two schools, because they're a model for what happens when all of these great things that make schools powerful and make students high achievers, that contribute to high achievement, this is what it looks like when all these things are working together. So those are kind of the big things I'm taking away.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you. That feels really, I feel like I actually have the beginnings of a smart plan moving forward.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.